Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Van Diesel back with Card 5 Vanguard deck profile. So because you're already come subscribe and sorry. This time we're covering DZ set 1 for Greedon. Another deck that wasn't really popularized with the idea of the DZ cards, but you know, with a good amount of support going into this, he has gotten better, and I feel a lot more comfortable using Greedon Masques as a main grade 3, more or less. We also have an honorable mention for a very specific card, mainly because it's an elephant, and that is Desire Devil Dokusan. I'll put up I'll hopefully remember to edit in an image of that grade 3, but pretty much when it's placed on rearguard circle, you can choose up to one Greedon or Desire Devil in your drops and send it to Soul, and then if you have 4 or more of either or, you get plus 5,000 power. He is an honorable mention because he does help Soul Charge, but the reason why he's not on this deck is because the deck, at least in my opinion, doesn't really need him. It's very consistent as is. So let's go to get this deck started, shall we, and see what we got, because honestly, this deck feels a lot more comfortable to play, at least compared to when Greedon Masques first came out. So first up today, we have our energy generator, as we usually do. So you might have one of your ride deck crest in your ride deck. Auto ride deck, when you would ride it, you can put this card into your crest zone. Then if you went second, you energy charge 3. You may have a total of 10 energies. And then auto, beginning of your ride phase, energy charge 3. And then act once per turn by energy blasting 7, you draw a card. All around, pretty solid, you know, for if your deck doesn't play a lot of energy blasting cards. This deck plays a few, then, you know, you get that free draw. But because the deck plays a few, being able to energy charge 3, which, by the way, literally sets off all of them that energy blast in this deck, pretty much means you get one of them for free that turn. So all around, very solid cards, especially because you can't play them until you get to Greedon. I mean, you're constantly sitting at either 6 or 9 energy every turn, unless you're spamming energy blast as much as physically possible. So very solid to have, like it a lot, and I also like the art of just having like a bunch of random light bulbs flying around. Let's move on to our ride deck. First up, we have Desire Devil Taida, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 6k base, auto opponent, 1 second draw card. Standard starter, no special about it. You can really use any starter you want because none of the ride line really requires Taida, but it is nice to have a Desire Devil because, for those of you who don't know, Masques wants to send Desire Devil specifically from the drop zone or from the rear guard into the soul, and again, if you're running that honorable mention card, you're going to want to have more Desire Devils as possible options to send to soul. So while yes, Taida is not necessary, he is definitely recommended for more options. And I don't know why I started saying that we're going to start with the ride deck, because the only card in the ride deck we're starting with is a grade 0, because if you don't know, I like to go by grades. So there's that. So one of in the ride deck of Taida. We move on to our main deck. First up, we have Hades, Dragon, Deity of Resentment, Gamaga Helm, grade 0 boost, 5k, 50k shield, 5k power, overtrigger. You may have overtrigger in your deck. When revealed, as a trigger, move that card, draw a card, choose one of your moods, it gets plus minimum for the turn. And if you revealed it during your check, activate its additional effect, which you get during your turn. All your vanguards get plus 10,000 power and plus 1 critical. A very powerful effect, because regardless if you damage check this or drive check, someone's getting a draw in a million, meaning either that turn something's going through or nothing's going through that turn. But then on top of this, if you drive check it, your Vanguard, who can restand at least once, and if you're on OG, possibly twice, will have an extra 10k in double crit, meaning at least 2 attacks that turn you're going to have with double critical, which is a lot of pressure to put on your opponent. Combined with the 8 crits we already have in the deck, that is a lot of cards they have to drop on defense because they can't afford to risk a lot of things. And if you pull this on your first grade, if you pull this on grade 1 turn, your opponent will hate you and they will probably scoop, because that means for the rest of the game, they have to deal with Vanguard attacks always having a guaranteed extra crit on them. All around, Gamaga Helm is a very solid overtrigger. You can run Volume Up for rear guard stand or Asphoria for recycling, but you're definitely going to want this overtrigger for pressure. And you could also use Van Freeze too, because they have the exact same skill, but I prefer Gamaga Child because it came out the same time, or around the same time as Greedon did. Then move on to our normal triggers. We have 3 copies of Rouse Wild Master Riley, grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Draw trigger, use guard circle. If opponent's Vanguard's a grade 3 or grade, she gives a 5k shield. So, 10k shield, very nice to have. She is a draw trick, so helps increase the hand. You don't want to see too much of her because you do go through your deck pretty fast with all of your drive checks and also all of your deck thinning. But being able to increase the hand a little bit is nice. And again, having a 10k shield is great because, sometimes you do want to go to 4 early so you can proc off OG Greedon as fast as possible. So being able to, or not OG Greedon, not OG anything. Bubble Shaku, because you do run Bubble Shaku in this deck. So being able to activate that as fast as possible does kind of require you to have a little bit of defensive power on hand, and Riley definitely helps out with that. Also, again, increases the hand so you can continuously throw down more rear guards that Greedon can devour to restand. So 3 of Riley, very solid grade 0. And we have a total of 8 crits, 4 flinty slashers. You can really make this anything, but I mean, might as well have the OG crit from Dark States that wasn't a Diablos in the deck. So Great Zoe boost 15k shield, 5k power. Nice to have a total of 8 crits going in with Stem Deviate 2. Great Zoe boost 15k shield, 4k power. Critical trigger auto rear at the end battle boosted. Puts you into soul, 2 super 1 units, and it gets with 2k power for that turn. So all around, pretty solid. We have 8 crits for pressure. Again, like I said, the Vanguard restanding twice, possibly, or at least once, getting 2 to 3 Vanguard attacks. Really nice to have that extra double crit pressure. Also, if it sounds like I'm stuttering or like my throat kind of hurts, it's because I'm sick, by the way, and I'm recording this because I kind of have to record this right now, so take that as you will. But yeah, all around pretty solid though for trigger lineup. We got draws, we got crits, and then we obviously have our 4 heals and Steam Scar, Maul in the Jaw. So boost 15k shield, 5k power. Standard heal, and that's about it. I don't really like the effect heals too much. I feel like they're too situational. If you want to run the effect heals, go ahead, but I'd much rather have a consistent 15k than a fluctuating 10 to 25. So take that as you will. And then move on to our actual normal units for once. So we have our first 2 cards at 2 copies. Well, not first 2 cards. First card at 2 copies. Sorry, the sickness is running through my head. Desire Devil Hiko, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto soul. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Greedon's card name attacks, bind another copy of itself from the soul face up and call this card to back or rear guard circle. All around, it's solid because, you know, if it ends, you can send it to Soul Fodder first up for Greedon Stan, and then while you have it as another card you want to have in Soul, meaning your Soul Blast targets for at least OG Greedon become a little bit more restricted. On the bright side, when the Vanguard swings, you get another unit that can call itself, meaning you either get more attacks that turn if you have something in front of it, or you get a booster out of it, or if you're on OG Greedon, you have another rear guard that can possibly allow the Vanguard to stand again. All around, Hiko's pretty solid, which is why we only run him at a 2 of. So, you know, worst case scenario, he can help with the extra Greedon restand or, you know, board presence. But once he goes back into Soul again, you automatically have a Soul Blast fodder. So, all around, very solid grade 1, nice and easy 2 of, and the moon has nothing to do with this because, frankly, I barely noticed the moon. And then move on to 4 copies of Desire Double Bubetsu. Grade 0 boot, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto rear guard once per turn when your other rear guard is put into your soul by your Vanguard's ability during this turn. By counterblasting 1, you can choose a card from your hand, call to an open rear guard circle. Then if your soul has 10 or more cards in it, you may draw a card. Or you have to draw a card. Maybe use even if it's put into the soul at the same time as other units. All around pretty solid because it allows you to get possibly more attacks that turn or with either Vanguard or rear guards. And this is where Hiku comes in useful. And you could also possibly draw a card, which happens less recently just because I don't know, it's weird. When we had only focused on the Soul Blasting Greedon, aka OG, somehow I hit the 10 Soul cards a lot more consistently than I hit off of Masques, who doesn't Soul Blast at all. But, all around, pretty solid, being able to get more rear guards for either Vanguard restand or just more rear guard attacks. It is all around pretty solid for a simple CB. Bubetsu's a very solid grade 1, and we run one of them as possible, so 4 of. And then we have 4 copies of the arguably worst Desire Devil in this deck. Desire Devil Gorjo, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Auto, when this unit is put from rear guard circle into your soul, if you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Greedon in its card name, Masques or OG, by Energy Blasting 3, you may put this card to your hand, and then continues guard circle. If you have a grade 3 or greater Vanguard Greedon in its card name, and your damage has 4 or more cards in it, plus 5k shield. Okay, the 5k shield part is redeeming, because it's like Riley, but this effect, which takes up 3 EB, just doesn't feel worth it. Like I said, you're trying to get to 10 souls so you can proc off OG Greedon more consistently if you are on OG Greedon, and having to waste 3 EB, especially when there's another card in the deck that costs the same amount, that does a lot more in terms of the offense power. Like, I get it. If you want to add it to hand for defense or more rear guard cycle, you can. But, like, the deck gets enough rear guard cycle to where unless your opponent goes all in next turn, you're probably going to have enough hand cards to get rear guards on board. And again, the grade 2, that also costs the same amount of EB, also gets a rear guard from Soul. So you don't really need to focus about recircling this back to hand unless you really want to. Gorjo's not a bad card. Do not get me wrong. It is just not needed though. Like, I think I've used the skill once and it was a game I lost and then I never used it again. So 4 of Gojo, he's not bad. It can recycle itself for guard power or recycle itself for rear guards on the next turn, but it's just not amazing in my opinion, but it's still a good 4 of. Then we have our PGs and Skill Hate Dragon, grade 1 boost, 0 souls, K base, continues Sentinel. You may have up to only 4 Sentinels in deck and also put on guard circle. Choose one of your units. It cannot be hit on the battle. And if your hand has 2 or more cards in it, choose a card from your hand discarded. Standard PG, nothing too special about it. Basically, that means if this and only one of the cards in here plus on guard circle, you don't have to discard one, which is great. Because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, which typically you don't unless like you're on Greedon and that's you're considered early game. Because sometimes you might want to call 5 units at once just to board pressure. Then in that case, yeah, when your opponent counterattacks you can throw down that and not really have to worry about it. But typically those go off in the late game because if you early call your board, your opponent will most likely kill the rear guards, and if they don't, well then they've pretty much given you access to a just an army of gunfire, as you not only have the early game rush advantage against them, but you also have a restanding Vanguard that's going to abuse that early game rush against them. So all around 4 for Skill Hate Dragon, very solid PG. You can run any of the Dark Sage PG that have the discard skill because all of them are good and they all do the exact same thing. But I prefer Skill Hate because it came out closer to the time of Greedon's release. And then we have the last grade one of them in the ride deck, none in the main deck of Desire Devil Golmon. Grade 1 boost 5k shield, AK base. Auto when rolled upon by Desire Devil Bushaku. Reveal obvious Demonic Dragon Greedon from your hand or from your ride deck and draw a card. So cool, the most unique ride deck card ever because it's the only one that actually interacts with the ride deck. And then auto when it's put from rear guard into your soul by the Vanguard's ability. If your opponent's Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, CB1 until end of turn. When your opponent call cards from the guard circle, they must call 2 or more at the same time. All around pretty solid ability because the deck, while yes, will eat into the CB, it will really only do that if Bubetsu is on your board. That's what I've learned by playing this deck so much. It's only when Bubetsu is on board this deck eats up CB. If you do not hit Bubetsu at all during the game, you will not run into CB problems, meaning you can abuse the ever-living hell out of Gomon if you want to, which is fun because that means for the entirety of the turn, not just for the Vanguard's next restand, they can only guard with 2 cards, meaning there is now value to call rear guards if you can't do the Vanguard restand anyways, because you're at least going to get more pressure out of their hand. So one of Gomon, you don't really need him in the main deck because again, there are cards that can call from Soul 2 actually, so it's nice to have in there for the soul fodder, but you definitely don't need it to pock up the main deck, so one of in the ride deck. And move on to our grade 2s. 2 copies of Desire Devil Fujo, very solid grade 2, who shows up when I need him to and just does his job well. He's also a horsey, and for those who don't know, I love horsies. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when put from rear guard into your soul by the ability of your Vanguard Greedon's card name. Choose one of your opponent's rear guards and murder it. You may murder it, actually. So, you pick something, you don't have to kill something, but if you want to kill it, you can, and you most likely will. Gets rid of interceptors, gets rid of pesky rear guards, if you know your opponent's going to live for the next turn. And then auto soul, when your Vanguard Greedon's card name attacks into anything, bind this card until end of battle. When your opponent would call cards from hand to guard circle, them to call 2 or more at the same time. So basically, budget version of Gomon in the regard of guarding, because Gomon works for the entire turn. Fujo only works for that battle. But in exchange, say for example, you can't call Gomon because you want to do double Vanguard restand, and that involves using Bubetsu, meaning you're going to eat up more of your CB, and maybe you'll eat up all of your CB, so you can't use Gomon. That's where Fujo comes in and basically means, like, at least for one battle, you get the guard restrict. So all around, Fujo is a very solid grade 2, kills rear guards. While yes, it does soul boss itself, it does restrict guard in case you can't use it with Gomon, so very solid grade 2, 2 of. Then we have 2 copies of Desire Devil Muka. Believe it or not, this card is actually useful in this deck. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when placed on rear guard circle from the hand if your Vanguard is average Demonic Dragon Greedon, because you can superior ride during the main phase since the Masques of Hydra Gum, so go ahead and play this while you're on OG. Current boss 1 to Soul Blast 2, choose a card from your soul and call it to rear guard. Downside is this pretty much takes up 3 of your soul, but on the bright side, it only costs 1 CB and it gets you any rear guard. This is one of the ways you can call Gomon from soul, or maybe Fujo, or literally any of the targets you want out of soul. It can just straight up call them. Granted, you have to be on OG Greedon, but most of the time you will be, because there is a way just to ride normal ride Greedon, play this, superior ride Mask, and I think you can maybe normal ride Greedon again, because the rest of them can do that, and then you superior ride again. But all around though, pretty solid. And then auto rear guard when your Vanguard attacks. If you persona rolled this turn, choose one of your Vanguards. I guess with 5,000 power for that turn. All around, pretty solid. Works on either of the 2 Greedons. Technically, it works on any grade 3. But being able to just persona ride, who will always have 2 attacks, and basically give it plus 10 for that turn, is all around pretty solid. Muka is a very good grade 2 for early game pressure and for setup, and for late game, he definitely adds that 5k, which does add a little bit of push to the game's power, the Greedon's firepower. So 2 of Muka. Very solid grade 2, just a good card. You don't want to see too many of him because, again, he does brick on Masques, but otherwise, good cards, so 2 of. Then we have 4 copies of arguably the best card in this deck, Desire Devil Alcray. Grade 2 and 5k shield, 10k base. The reason why I say this card is not that good, because they have the exact same cost. Auto when placed on rear guard circle during the main phase, but energy blasting 3. Choose any unit card Desire Devil's card name and a different card name from this unit from your soul. Call it to rear guard. You can use this to fetch a Muka, who if you're on OG Greedon can then fetch another rear guard. We have Fujo, Gomon, Gorjo, Bubetsu, Hiko. Just the possibilities are endless with this one. And then auto front one rear guard circle once per turn. When your grade 3 or greater Vanguard with Greedon its card name attacks until end of turn, that unit gets plus 5,000 power. Then if your damage has 4 more cards, this unit will get plus 5,000 power. So All around pretty solid. I love how the fact that his power gain to the Vanguard is not restricted by having the damage, it's his own, which is good because typically you're going to send most of your, if not all of your rear guards into your soul. So being able to give the Vanguard the 5k for free, guaranteed just by simply swinging, is great. And then, if you do have the extra rear guards for the restand and you have the 4 or more damage, it's a 15k on its own as well. So all praise all around a very solid grade 2. As numbers to the Vanguard, as numbers to itself, gets you more rear guards for Greedon. Easiest 4 I've ever seen in my entire life. And then we have our last grade 2, one of in the ride deck, 2 of in the main deck of Desired Devil Boshaku. Grade 2 instead 5k shield, 10k base. Auto wrote upon by average summon Dragon Greedon, send a hand card to soul. Search your deck for up to 1 card, the same card name as this card. Reveal, put it to hand, and shuffle your deck. Okay, this is not me calling out anyone specifically because my friend even did this, and this is not me calling him out either. But I remember when this card came out, everyone, and I mean everyone, thought that that skill meant you search your deck for a copy of the card you sent to soul. I never understood that because for me, it was clear that it was set because it says this card as in itself. I never understood that. That's not me calling anyone stupid. That's not me saying anything. I'm just saying I don't see how people got that confused. And again, that's not me saying anything about anyone. I'm just saying I never wrapped my head around it. And then the other skill, continuous soul. During your turn, if you have a damage zone, if your damage zone has 4 more cards in it, the average amount of Dragon Greedon on your Vanguard circles 5,000 power. So downside is, if you're on Masques, this does not give it 5k, but on the bright side, if you are on OG, not only do you get a free hand card to soul, meaning you could possibly lose another copy of Listen to your soul, but that means if you're on OG, the Vanguard gets plus 15, so 28k swing with a restand, who can possibly get another 15k off his own skill, so 43k swing without triggers, is all pretty solid. So 1 of in the right deck, 2 of in the main deck. Again, it does brick on Masque, which is why some of the Greedon support sucks, because the 2 really good cards that were carrying it, Boshaku and Muka, were hard requiring the OG. But on the bright side, if you are on the OG, they definitely help carry the deck, because otherwise the deck kind of falls apart without the Masques, since you give up a good amount of power gain. So 1 of Boshaku in the ride deck, 2 of in the main deck. Is just a very solid grade 2 all around, and you just want to have it just in case you are on OG Greedon. Then we have our grade 3s. First, we have 4 copies of Mask of Hydragum. Grade 3, normal order. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck. Choose up to 1 unit card with Draco Tree or Masques and card from Mother. Reveal, put it to hand, shuffle your deck. So cool, can search your deck for the Masques, which is great. And then Act Drop Zone. If you have a grade 3 Vanguard without Mask in its card name, reveal a grade 3 with Mask in its card name from your hand, aka this boy. Sorry, wrong card. This boy. Send this card to your soul, ride the card revealed as stand. If you roll, put this card into your soul. Then if your opponent's Vanguard's at grade 3 or greater, you can Persona Ride this turn if you did not Persona Ride already. Which all around is pretty solid because, you either guaranteedly just get a better base deck on board for later and possibly set up for Persona Rides for later turns in case you only had this one in hand. You didn't have this one in hand, you only had it on Vanguard Circle. But on top of that, if they were at grade 3 because you went second, free Persona Ride before they get to Persona Ride, and when you have a restanding Vanguard with that much pressure on it, yeah, that's pretty good. All around pretty solid. It deck thins, it superior rides, it could possibly Persona Ride, easy 4 of, it's just a good card. Then we move on to our normal unit grade 3s. 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck of Average Demon Dragon Greedon. Grade 3, turn of Persona Ride, 13k base. Continuous Vanguard Circle. If your soul has another copy of it in there, the number of cards you damage zone you lose at becomes 7. So pretty much you don't lose the game easily, and you F over your opponent's heals if you go sit at 6 damage. For the record though, if you are at 6 damage and you blast out a copy of this, and that was the only copy in your soul, you do die. I want to let that be clear. But if you are at 6 damage and a copy of this is in soul while you're on this, your opponent's heals pretty much are nullified unless they are playing Razio, which specifically says when you damage check a card for your 6 damage, if it is a trigger, you do heal 1. But anyways, going to his other skill, Auto Vanguard, at the end of this unit attacked, Soul Blast 2, and put 4 standing rear guards into your soul to stand him, and then if your soul has 10 or more cards in it, plus 15k for the turn. All around pretty solid. It does eat up 2 soul, but on the bright side, it sends 4 more rear guards in there. You can stand him. He'll be a 28k swing if you have 10 or more cards in there, and not to mention the fact too, he doesn't lose drive checks, so you have a total of 4 drives that turn, basically replacing the units you lost from your skill, and not to mention the fact that you proc off a lot of abilities, such as Fujo killing rear guards, or possibly him, Gorjo going back to hand, or Bubetsu getting more rear guards, or Hiko getting more rear guards to do double restand, because that ability is not a once per turn, meaning you can possibly do 2 restands that turn, and he will most likely have that extra 15k by the end of the second one. So 2 of in the main deck of Greedon, 1 of in the ride deck. You want the extra 2 of his possible persona ride options. Also, again, so in case you're not on Masques, because it can happen, because it happened to me the first time I played the deck, and I did still have both these at 4, by the way. You can at least proc off his skill if you still have a copy in Soul, and not to mention the fact he can at least get more numbers than Masques consistently. So there's that. 2 of OG Greedon in the main deck, 1 of in the ride deck, just a very good card to have. Also, you want targets for Masques just in case. Speaking of Masques, last card in the deck, Avarice Demonic Dragon King, Greedon Masques, or Greedon Mask, whatever the fuck you want to call it, even though Mask is how they pronounce it in the English dub. Grade 3 turn persona, 13k base. 4 different skills actually. Continuous, he can only be ridden by a grade 3 from a grade 3 with Greedon in its card name. Continuous Vanguard Circle, the number of damage cards you lose that becomes 7. So unlike OG, who specifically required something else in Soul, as long as you are on this thing, you automatically don't die until you get to 7. Though if you're playing premium and your opponent deletes you and you are at 6, you will lose because you lose all your skills. But cool, die at 7. Then act Vanguard Circle once per turn. Move any different named Greedon from your hand, Soul, or drop zone. So this boy, I say don't remove the one from Soul. Look at the top 7 cards of your deck. You have to 1 Desire Devil from one of them. Reveal it, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck. Okay. That skill is not bad because it, again, can hit literally anything in the main deck pretty much. But it would be so much better, and it will become so much better the day Bushy gives us name archetypal PGs, because they used to do that. If Bushy, God forbid, gave us archetypal PGs, either they just made them the PGs that require the discard regardless if you have 1 or less cards or not, but if they gave us an archetypal PG for Desire Devils, this automatically becomes so much better because then that means you can search a PG. And then that means all these effects that require Desire Devils, such as Alacray, suddenly become really useful because we have more targets. Not saying that will ever happen, but if they do, we got more targets. And his other ability, Auto Vanguard once per turn. At the end of battle that he attacked, if your soul has 3 more Desire Devil cards in their card names, which again is why Tide is kind of necessary because it adds more fodder for that skill to proc off. Send 3 of your standing rear guards into your soul, and then send this unit, and he'll get plus 5,000 power for that turn. So he'll guarantee to get the power buff, and he doesn't lose drive checks either. But if you do not have the 3 Desire Devils, which means you do kind of have to run the full Desire Devil ride unless you're confident you can Soul Charge, because Demonic Dragon over here does not have Desire Devil in his card name, obviously, then he won't stand. But again, he does send 1 less rear guard to Soul, which means you can just send your entire back row and get a total of 4 attacks that turn. But he has a lot less power going into it. So he's basically Greedon but more consistent. So pretty much what I can tell you is go into Mask most of the time, especially if you have Hydrogram, because it can get, I guess, a little bit more power that turn, and it can save you rear guards. But if you want the numbers, go for OG, because OG will definitely hit you more numbers, especially once you hit that 10 card threshold, and also with Bushaku and Soul as well. So without further ado, I'm going to here. Hope you guys enjoyed. All in this deck is very fun to play. I didn't like the OG version of it with just Masques and Hydrogum going into it, basically the set 11 version when it came out, because it just felt like it just didn't work. But then this one, maybe it's just because of Alakrai's introduction that adds 5k more to either of them, meaning this one's a little bit stronger. I don't know what it was. It just makes the deck feel more consistent. You have 2 different ways of Vanguard restanding, not to mention the fact that you have 2 different ways of just pressuring your opponent out. You have a bunch of crits to basically deal with your opponent. You have draws to help increase your hand. You have a bunch of ways to get possible double Vanguard attack either on OG Greedon, and you have a bunch of cards that make being on either Greedon really well, or just a really good thing to do. So without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. Hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, join Discord, follow Twitch. I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to stand up your Vanguards.